So I like books that have to do with ghosts. And if you have a book that may have something that says or sounds ghosty in the title, there's a good chance I might pick it up if I see it. So I was at the library the other day and I came across the title, The Ghosts of Beatrice Bird. That initially pulled me in and it sounded like something that was right up my alley. So picked it up, took it home, and then after the fact, realizing that I had read this author before. It's by Louisa Morgan. She wrote The Great Witch of Brittany, which is a great witchy story. If you like stories that have to do with witches, it's fantastic. I have a standalone review for that, and I'll link that down below if you want to check that out as well. So obviously there's this character named Beatrice Bird, and she's got some ghosts, but her ghosts are what you might call unique. And they're not necessarily her ghosts. What she sees is other people's ghosts. Recently, she's moved to this little island. There's not a whole lot of people on the island. There's like a nun who runs the ferry, and there's a convent on the island and some other people that live there. And she kind of wanted to move to a place that was more isolated because she was living in San Francisco. She was a psychiatrist and had a practice that was doing fairly well. But at some point, she starts seeing all these people's ghosts, and it becomes absolutely overwhelming. So, and what she's seeing too are not necessarily ghosts. They're like the emotional embodiment of the pain and possibly trauma and just stuff in their lives that people are carrying around with them like a burden on their shoulders. And it's become too much for her. So she had to leave. It kind of broke up her relationship. She was in a relationship with a really great man, and she misses him dearly. His name is Mitch, so he's still in San Francisco. She comes to this island. As you get into the story, you see that she didn't always see ghosts like this, but she always had what might be considered second sight, where she knew things and had intuition that was a bit more so than other people would. And growing up, she was raised by her dad. Her mom passed away really young. He was a doctor, and he raised her to, you know, follow her dreams and do what she wanted to do. And he would have her come out with him for his different medical stuff that he would do, and she would help out in ways that she could. And sometimes she would just know things that should be done, or know things that maybe the patient wasn't telling him that would be important to treating these people. And so she's always had that. And then this takes place, the current times in this is like the late 70s. And so, you know, San Francisco, summer of love, free love, all that stuff. She ends up having this patient, and this is before she's seeing the ghosts. They're trying to work through some stuff and issues he's got going on. One day he comes in and they're able to like break down the door and get through and, you know, break out through to the other side. So he ends up having this breakthrough, and then because of this, he's able to move on and decides he's going to go back home and get away from all this, like the drugs and stuff that's out here. But he had done LSD, and he said he really felt like that's what opened him up and made him be able to like break through. And he's like, you know, you should try it sometime. She didn't really think much of it. And before he leaves to go back home, he stops back in one more time and thanks her again, and then he gives her some LSD. And she's like, what? And then so maybe she's a little curious about it. One night when Mitch, her significant other, he is working late, she takes a tab, and it's like this amazing experience. The first time she doesn't start seeing the people's ghosts right away, but it makes her maybe a little more deeper intuitive, it seems. And so she does it a few more times, but then stuff builds and it starts to get worse, and then the ghosts get worse, and it starts overwhelming her to the point where her relationship kind of breaks up. She moves away to this island and all of that. So now she's on this island trying to like escape these ghosts. But I mean, you can't really run from who you are, can you? The ghosts will always follow, won't they? So she's there, she's living this life, she has this cute, adorable cottage, the sea is nearby, it's beautiful, there's, you know, the nun, she's really nice. The good thing about the nun is her ghosts are kind of almost non-existent. They're kind of faded, and so she can kind of handle being around the nun. The nun's not that bad, but there's this other guy that brings wood to her and stuff for her wood-burning stove in the little cottage, and his are a little bit overwhelming, even though he's super nice. She's starting to, like, you know, feel okay as long as she avoids people and all that stuff. But one day, this woman comes to the island. Her name's Anne, and she's in the little store by the ferry. She's just come across, and she's coming to see this nun, and Beatrice was in there. But as soon as she saw this woman, she saw her ghost, like this little boy wrapped around her ankles, and then this huge, looming, dark, evil presence over her shoulders. So she like books it out of there, and it's like, I gotta go. Didn't even talk to her, didn't look at her. I was like, I'm out of here. So this woman, Anne, has come to the island because she is seeking sanctuary. She was in a very horrible relationship with a very evil and abusive man. Physically, emotionally, also he's a judge, so he has all this pull in town, and he's just an evil sack of crap. And she's his second wife, and is never allowed to bring up the first wife. Apparently she just left him and went back home to England, and they never heard from her again. All right, so she comes there, she's talking to the nun, and the nun is like, we don't have a spot for you. Like, she wanted to come stay and possibly, you know, become a nun, and the nun is just like, I don't have a spot for you to stay, this, that, and the other. But then she reaches out to Beatrice Bird, and Beatrice gets a phone call, and she answers it, and it's Mother Maggie, and she's like, hey, I have a situation just for one night. Anne needs a place to stay. She came over. We don't have room for her at the sanctuary, or sorry, at the convent. Everything in Beatrice's body wants to say, absolutely not. But she'd come off as a crazy person if she's like, you know, about the ghosts, and she doesn't want to be rude and mean because she just moved to this island. So she's like, okay. She's like, oh God, I'll suck it up. I can handle it for one night. So Anne comes and stays. And it's almost like a godsend for both of them. In the beginning, it's kind of awkward and awful, and Beatrice won't even look at her, but they start to help each other work out their crap. And there is a lot of crap. And it's such a good story. I really, really loved it. It is emotional and tormented, and it's sad and heartbreaking. The emotional and physical abuse in it is very disturbing too. So always read your content warnings. Those two become supportive to each other, and as they both open up to each other and share their stories and work through both of their trauma and their weirdness, it's a question of, will Beatrice ever be able to be in normal society again with seeing all these people's ghosts, or will she learn to deal with it better? Will Anne truly escape the situation she's in because her husband is an evil sack of crap and he's coming after her, or he's going to try to find her on this island in the sea? What will happen? Will these women find their true freedom? Well, you'll have to read it to find out, and it's fantastic. I really loved it. If you haven't read this author before, I think she's great. This is the second one I've read by her. I really enjoyed it. I like the style of writing. I like the characters. I love stuff that has to do with ghosts and ghost stories. It has a real heart and soul to it, you know, like when a book has a heartbeat, and this one kind of tugs on the heartstrings quite a bit. So if you're a fan of stories that have to do with being haunted, the next video coming up will be about that, so stick around, check it out. And if you had fun hanging out today, hit that subscribe button, come back, see me again, and we'll talk about more bookish things and weird stuff.